Hey there troops, it's me TheTacticalBrit. Now recently this has become a big discussion in the Battlefield community, and that is of course RSP. Now for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, that is the rental server program. And custom servers have been something in Battlefield that we've just fundamentally come used to as a franchise and as a community. You know, we can always point to servers that we played a lot in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and of course things like Bad Company 2, etc. You know, there are plenty of games nowadays that rely on custom servers like Battlefield in order to sustain a life cycle beyond the original year or so of content that they originally planned. You know, you could still find custom Battlefield 4 and 3 servers today. Hell, I probably bet you can find Bad Company 2 servers as well relatively easily. And for me, for example, I found myself quite heavily on things like Goldman Railway 24/7. I found myself on things like Close Quarters 24/7 in Battlefield 3 days. And it's vitally important that Battlefield continues RSP. But recently we've had a statement from the global community manager of Battlefield, Dan Mitri, about RSP and what exactly is going to happen with it. And today I'm going to read you that statement and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. So Dan Mitri says, in regard specifically to RSP, I'm going to keep it simple. You haven't seen an update in our direction with RSP because we haven't made a full decision internally on whether or not we can deliver it. RSP needs to meet standards and your expectations of the tools we provide. That takes development resources. It also needs to make economical development sense. We can't introduce a feature that ends up costing more to keep maintained than it returns. I know that statement will open up more debate and I encourage it, but this is the reality of the situation. In other words, we don't want to impact development resources of main game quality of life commitment and upcoming content by routing team bandwidth to RSP development. There's also financial implications here that go well beyond my remit. Let's tackle the former before we tackle the latter. That said, is RSP off the table? Not at all. Our teams need to weigh carefully and either fully commit the service or not provide it at all, and you will need an official statement when this decision has been made. Now this statement to me is incredibly disappointing, and Dan Mitri, I'm afraid, recently has found himself being the bearer of a lot of bad news in some respects. And of course this, reply to this statement's no disrespect to him. I'm sure, he's very much there vouching for us as players who vouch for RSP, as community managers around Battlefield genuinely do. Now, for me, this statement's incredibly disappointing, more to the handling of RSP in Battlefield 1, and why there doesn't seem to be any kind of connection between Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1. Now, it seemed to me that RSP was brought in-house in Battlefield 1 and integrated into the back-end UI for specific reasons that would be easier to redeploy in Battlefield 5 and future games that were also incorporated into this back-end UI. All of the games have now been sort of merged together on a menu, not completely because you can't launch them, but there seemed to be some kind of effort and degree that the whole idea here would be that everything would all be in one place. And it seems to me that not only have they not delivered in that respect, but now the resources and expenditure that they attempted to try and get that up and running is also just a waste, because there's not going to be a redeployment of RSP in Battlefield 5 with the same kind of back-end structure. RSP in Battlefield 1 wasn't perfect, it did take a while, and when it first launched it didn't even have things like password protection. But at the very minimum now, we need something as simple as password protection just to launch, just for communities to do well and thrive. Now, the fact is, well and truly, if I'm going to make this black and white, is that EA and DICE have made the decision to take servers internally because they felt that that would be profitable for them, or they felt that, potentially that would give extra quality to the game. Both of those are true. And now they seem to not be able to provide it, and they seem to not be able to provide it because the development resources and cost at hand. So effectively they've brought something in-house which they thought may have generated them profit, and have now effectively said, well actually, this is going to cost a lot of money for developers and a lot of money for us, so we might not do it. And I'll be honest with you, that seems like a huge slap in the face. You've ripped away these pro-con and generic tools away from third parties, and I can understand why. Some of them weren't up to scratch, they didn't provide certain quality, but some of them were. And now they've effectively said, well, might not be up for us, we're not really sure about it, it might cost us some money, and maybe it won't return the money that we're looking for, or maybe it'll affect the amount of developers that we need to hire. And that just seems really cheap, I think, is the best way to term it. And like I say, this is no disrespect, because this is a franchise I love, and of course every time I criticize the game it's really about something that I'm passionate about. But the fact that you've taken a service online internally and then you seem to be not able to cater for it. Now, of course, it doesn't say it's off the table, but the fact that it's already been brought into financial question, seemingly at the top level of decision making, seems to say safely that this is something that is very much in doubt at the moment, is upsetting. And I'll outline why exactly this is upsetting. Now, rental server programs aren't as simple as, custom game modes and pistol only and knife only and stuff like that. In Battlefield, it is very much a lifeline for a lot of aspects of the community. And not only is this important in terms of what the community can do and how much it can expand the game, but more importantly, it's vital to how the community can do things further down the line and extend the life cycle of this game and extend the enjoyment without the added pressure of more development work needed. So first off, at a very basic fundamental level, you've got different map and mode rotations that people will find more preferable. There are certain map and mode rotations in Battlefield 4 and 3 that kept me coming back, and that was why I would continue to play the game, and that's something I think we're fundamentally missing at the moment. And you can see the entire server leave, for example, when Conquest Assault on Hamada appears, and that's incredibly disappointing. This is something that we just need in the game. It's something that people will always gravitate towards, just like they'll gravitate towards any kind of favoured map at any given moment on any given game. And, eventually you end up identifying servers that you play a lot in and that your friends will play a lot in because they identify with the same kind of rotations. And that's exactly why we build better community bridges together. The next part about all of this is competitive aspects. We have, time and resources that have been committed to things like incursions that we haven't heard much of recently. I think we maybe will see that come back at some degree. But how the hell is any kind of competitive community or competitive environment supposed to get off the ground without custom servers or private servers for that matter? Someone like ESB Battlefield or just esports in general won't be able to do things like squad conquest tournaments because they just simply won't be able to privatize servers, and they won't be able to get the access and lock-in that they need in order to do these things. And that's incredibly disappointing because a lot of time and resources has been committed to things like incursions, but there also needs to be facilitation of the community to allow them to run their own competitive events and allow them to kind of step towards incursions in their own ways. And the fact that we won't even have that, and we won't even have that availability for players to, steadily breed into it, is incredibly disappointing. And that's not even discussing things like, extra stuff like casting and, getting the spectator mode correctly, which they actually dedicated time to. They dedicated time to creating a better spectator mode, but now seemingly can't use it because we won't have passworded servers. Another thing that's really disappointing, and arguably one of the biggest ones, is now we've condemned an entire creative segment of our community really badly here. Now, I understand these guys are a vocal minority, they're a small base of creatives, but they've done so much for this franchise, and they've done so much work, and so much of what they do stems into what we do as YouTube creators, and what even the companies have adopted in a way, and that is of course screenshotters and cinematic recorders. DICE has actually gotten to the point where they hired some of the dudes who created lots of cinematics and screenshots because they were just that impressive. And the ability to do that was always something that made our community look impressive. It's the reason NVIDIA's doing all of this RTX on promotion, is because they know we've got a shit hot game that creators can show off, and they have been doing that, and they've even recognized it with that NVIDIA promotion. And the fact that they won't have private servers now to continue to create, and they won't have servers potentially to continue to create some amazing cinematics that we've seen that have even, led to entire employment and careers at EA and DICE, is incredibly sad. And these guys, I feel, deserve, to some degree, the ability to have those private servers to continue creating, not only for, in-game promotional material that DICE and EA can use, but also just to show off what an incredible game we have. And that was always, part of the whole Only in Battlefield experience, is that, we've got a game that's so damn good looking and so incredible that people could create full-blown cinematic movie trailers out of it. And I think that's really sad that that could potentially die down. Now, of course, it isn't impossible to do it on the public servers, but it's so much more difficult. Especially the more complicated one that actually require, a degree of choreography and actually getting people together. That's completely impossible to do on a public server. You need private servers for that. Sadly, on the whole, we're talking about, 3 pretty big pillars of the community here that have all been hit pretty hard. And I understand that maybe RSP doesn't affect everybody, or maybe not every average player, but it's definitely something that the average player does see. They do see custom servers, they do find them interesting. They'll see a title like Life Only and be like, ooh, seems like a bit of fun. And I think that's really sad. I think, you know, the fact that so many different aspects of our community are potentially being thrown into question here, more or less on the basis of a decision that I kind of rejected in the first place, is upsetting. I think the fact that, you know, we've got screenshotters, community members, we've got, you know, longevity of the Battlefield title, as well as things like, you know, competitive Battlefield being thrown into disarray on the basis that, you know, servers were brought internally because they thought, hey, this is a good idea, maybe it'll be profitable, maybe we can improve quality, and then that service simply wasn't provided, and now potentially isn't going to be provided, is incredibly disappointing. And I gotta say, it does feel like a slap in the face, you know. And I'm not here to, I don't want to complain about Battlefield, you know. This is a game that I'm incredibly passionate about. It's a franchise that I really enjoy, but the fact that we've reached a point now where something as fundamental as RSP, which has always been something so critical to our community and what we do, is now a big financial question, it seems sad. And you know, that's really all I gotta say on the matter. So troops, that's about it from me today, the Tactical Brit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in the next video.